Hi, Kevin from Rebuilders here. Today I want to talk about the two reasons why someone leaves a marriage. And these are two very fundamental reasons and gets really to the core of a lot of things. So these are really powerful because a lot of people are stuck wondering what happened, why, I don't understand, and it's really, really painful. Today's session is for the people who were the resistors in the marriage and the other person left, because a lot of times the resistor is the person who's trying to understand what happened and why. If you don't understand what the resistor is, look at some of my other episodes about that. I want to tell a story about this guy, Aaron Ralston. So he was this guy who lived in Utah, and he was a person that loved going off on his own throughout the canyons in Utah. And one time he was kind of climbing through this canyon in Utah, and he used to move really fast. He would leap, he would do lots of things. And one time he was jumping through this area in this kind of canyon, and really narrow, like the size of his body. And he said that he jumped and he knocked a boulder loose from above. And as he was jumping through, his arms were up, and at least one arm was up as he was trying to position himself to go through it. Well, the rock fell at just the right timing that it landed, and it wedged his arm between the side of the wall and the other side of the wall, and he was stuck. His arm was completely pinned in there. So he wrote this book called Between a Rock and a Hard Place, and it is an amazing story about his experience. But I want to summarize that for you and then use it for our talk today. So what happened was, he got pinned, and immediately, of course, he tried to figure out what can he do. He tried pushing the rock off, and this rock weighed many hundreds of pounds. I think he estimated like 400 pounds. There was no way he was going to be able to lift it on his own. He tried to kind of slide his arm out. He tried to pry it. He tried all these things. He did this for days, trying to find a solution. He was yelling. He was screaming. He was doing everything he could possibly think of, but he was stuck. So he got to this point of realizing, either I need to do something drastic here, or I'm going to die here in this canyon all alone. So what he did was he pulled out his pocket knife and he had to cut off his arm. So amazing story, but the experience of actually cutting off his arm was really, really gruesome. And yet there's some real parallels for a lot of people that I talk to that are going through divorce. So I want to explain that a little bit more. So the thing is, for a lot of people going through divorce, what they experience is like Aaron. So Aaron says that what happened was, he kept trying to figure out a way. He kept trying to think of what he could do. And he had this thought of, I might need to cut off my arm. But then it took him a whole day to really come to terms with that is the only solution. That was the only way he was going to live. And he knew that when he cut it off, there was a chance he still would die from blood loss. And so at some point there, he finally decided, okay, I think he slept a little bit in the night and with excruciating pain in his arm. And then finally, he said, this is it. I have to either do it or die. So he started cutting, and it hurt like crazy. And he can remember, he said his body kind of went into this, and his mind into this sort of state, this trance. And it was painful, and yet he just knew this is what he had to do. And there was this moment in that, even though it was extremely painful, it was this point where he hit this nerve, and it was excruciating. He said everything in his body was just electrified. Hitting these main nerves that were for his arm and cutting through those was just unbelievable pain. Eventually he got through it. He was able to, he tourniqueted his arm so that he wouldn't die of blood loss. And then he actually was able to walk out of there and get rescued. And so he lived. So extraordinary experience for him. So I tell you this because a lot of people who are the resistor in a divorce don't realize that the initiator a lot of times feels like Aaron Ralston. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to that are the initiator, and they have a very different story than the resistor. They've tried for years to make it work, to feel connected, to share with their significant other their life. And for one reason or another, it just wouldn't work. And it was such a difficult decision to make the choice to leave the marriage. It was painful. And there are certain moments in there where it might have been very, very painful, but like Aaron Ralston, there's a point of no return. There's a point when you hit that nerve where you know that it's going to cause significant trust issues, significant harm to the whole relationship, and there's no going back from there. This experience is powerful to understand, because for a lot of times, the person who's resisting in the divorce doesn't realize how much pain the other person is in. And sometimes the person who's the initiator struggles with how there's sort of this ongoing pain, but it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. So they kind of realize that, just like Aaron Ralston, it's kind of a do or die. Either I stay in this marriage and suffer for a lot longer till the end of my life, or I make the choice to leave. Now, I'm not advocating one way or the other about whether what's right or what's wrong. I'm just saying this is the experience that I hear over and over from women that I talk to. So, for example, there was a woman I know that she told me about so they had 2 children. Both were deaf, but one had significant autoimmune issues. And so if he would get a cold, his body didn't know how to fight it ever. And what would happen is he would end up having to go to the hospital. And they would do a massive amount of things. One of the big things they had to do was bone marrow transplants. It was painful for the child. It was incredibly expensive. And neither one of them earned much. And so these surgeries would cost them about $5,000 at a time. They had 3 of these times this happened. So financially, they were strapped. They were always on the edge of financial ruin. And yet they were able to buy a home and do these things and try and invest. And they just struggled with this so much. And so what happened is that this woman's husband would go and buy these expensive toys for himself without asking. He bought a really, really nice mountain bike. He bought a snowmobile. And she was exhausted. She was working hard trying to raise the kids, keep the children safe, truly from dying. And he would, because he felt so constrained, I think, he would go out and he would just buy these things because he just needed some release. But it significantly affected the trust in the relationship. And she finally got tired of 6 years of this. And she was like, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to be in this marriage because I need to keep my kids safe, and he's not doing it. What happened for her was she finally, after 6 years, decided, I'm done, I'm out, and I would be better off on my own, making sure that I can save the money that I have, keep my children safe, and live without him, because he's just not there for me. So that was a pretty powerful story that she told me, and she felt horrible about it. She was so angry that he would not be part of the team, that he would not listen, that he was just doing what he wanted to do. And in her mind, acting like a child. I want this, so I'm going to go do it. So that was her experience, and she eventually divorced him because she couldn't do it. That was her position as the initiator of the divorce. So when people go through divorces, I listen for 2 things to understand what was the thing that was missing. And what I found is that there's really these 2 things that are significant pieces and fundamental to whether a marriage survives or not. Now, there's lots of different research around these things, of more detail around this, and I'll talk about those on another day. But for now, I want to talk about the first one, which is trust. So when I talk to people, there's a lot of times there's a point where, like the nerve for Aaron Ralston, trust is broken. There's a point where we say, I cannot trust this person to be with me. I cannot trust that they're safe. I cannot trust that they will tell me the truth. I can't trust them with money. I can't trust them with, certain things. And there's a decision point that says, this is it. The line has been crossed too much, too far, too many times, anything like that. And so that trust is really broken. Now, one of the things that about trust is, I think the other way to say it for people is, Sometimes it's physical abuse, mental abuse, other things like that. But it all comes down to trust. The opposite of trust is really, am I safe with you? So people say, I can't be with this person because for one reason or another, I don't feel like I'm getting my needs met. I don't feel safe. I don't feel like I can trust you. I don't feel all those things. It's all that kind of, that's the entity that people struggle with, is that's broken. Okay? So that's one thing, trust. Or if you want to call it, am I safe with you? The second thing that I see for people of why marriages break down is around communication. So a lot of people will say, we just never learned how to talk. We didn't talk about anything other than kids, or we would get angry at each other and one person would get mad and the other person would retreat, or and there's different communication styles out there, but there was something around that we couldn't figure out how to communicate, or we just started communicating less and less and less. So that communication sort of went downhill. So this kind of thing, this communication, another way to say it is connection, right? Communication is about connection. So a lot of times in relationships, what I see is that people talk about how they lost connection with this person. They lost things like trust, or they lost this intimacy that they needed. I want to be heard. I want to be seen. I want to be understood. I want to know that you are listening, that I matter. All of those things are super important in a relationship. And so when those things start to be lost, we lose connection. And for a lot of times what happens is then intimacy, both physical and just kind of a mental, emotional, psychological connection gets lost. And so, people stay in marriages for a long time without having any kind of intimacy. But ultimately they say, I'm living with a person I don't even know. And so that's really, really hard. And I can tell you, so I speak about both of these things, and I can tell you that both happened in my marriage. I was the resistor, and there was a certain level of realizing that we lost both of these. There was trust issues and there was communication issues. And so, this hard spot to be in of when you don't have one or both of those, it leaves a relationship without anything to work from. It isn't a relationship anymore. Now, to put it back in the context of the physical, like Aaron Ralston, I think of trust as like a heartbeat, right? It's the thing that if you don't have ongoing trust for people, the relationship dies. And I think of communication as like blood, right? It's the thing that feeds the body. It feeds the body of the relationship so that you can keep nourishing it. But if you have a heartbeat but there's no communication, the body dies. If you have communication but no trust, the body dies. Both of those things are so essential. And so really having both of those things at a high level, that's what's missing. So real quick, if you enjoyed this video, please click the like button, click the subscribe button, click the bell to be notified of future videos, because I'm going to be doing these as often as I possibly can. And it really helps me to know that there's people out there that want more of this material. And in the comments, please tell me what you like, what you don't like, questions you have. All right, so if you're looking for trying to understand these things, understand the communication issues, understand the trust issues, there's a whole lot there, and I'd be happy to talk to you more about this. We do this kind of work with people. We help them one-on-one trying to understand these things for them, give them feedback on what happened, why, or how to do it better next time. If you're interested in something like this, go to rebuilders.net, and you can look on the one-to-one menu for individual coaching. And this is what we do. We help people, and we do it, help you understand it very, very quickly. This isn't some kind of thing that takes a long time to work through. For a lot of people, it's, it can be a very quick process to work through some of these really fundamental things so that you can start to understand how to let go and move on in your life.